ॐ यो देव सवितास्माकं धियो धर्मादिगोचराः प्रेरयेत्तस्य यद्भर्गः तद्वरेण्यम् उपास्महे। आरम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। We are in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What did we discuss? Last class, any memories there? Okay. The last verse we discussed. Because we went through the first few verses of the 6th chapter. It is on Dhyana Yoga, the topic of meditation, where the chapter begins with the understanding that in essence Karma Yoga is also sannyasa. Okay, in essence. That is, usually people think sannyasa, the formal renunciation alone is renunciation, but Karma Yoga is something else. No, in essence Karma Yoga is sannyasa. It is not other than sannyasa. Without Karma Yoga, dhyana is not possible unless a person lets go of the result-oriented mind. Rather, unless a person grows out of the habit of being result-oriented. To be result-oriented is basically lack of understanding, childishness. So when you really get the required maturity by viveka, by understanding, by studying and all that, you will see that there is no point worrying about the result. Another, then I am attached to the result. If I really analyze the nature of happiness that is dependent on the results, I see that it is a very fragile way of arriving at happiness. In Mundaka Upanishad, there is a verse that says, working for happiness through time-bound desires, looking for happiness through time-bound desires and time-bound results is like traveling in a river with a very weak boat, going in a very weak boat and a fragile boat in a river under flood. How dangerous and how unreliable it is. In the same way, chasing happiness through results, time-bound results, is also an unreliable method. So a person desirous of freedom must understand the pointlessness of chasing time-bound desires. So when the mind is active, when the mind cannot meditate, but there is a desire for freedom, what to do? The person learns to work for the sake of purification of the mind with an attitude of devotion to the Lord and not being attached to the results of action. Such a mind becomes capable of meditation. Such a mind becomes capable of concentration. So that is what is the topic being discussed here. So he is preparing a person for meditation. The one who performs action that is to be done, not driven by the ends in view, such a person is a sannyasi and a yogi also. Not just the sannyasi who has renounced all the rituals and who does not perform any other action. So the person who has simply renounced does not become a renunciate. Renunciation is in the spirit of renunciation, which is basically desirelessness. The essence of renunciation is desirelessness. In that sense, a yogi is also a renunciate because he is desireless with respect to the results of action. Then the next one. What they say as renunciation, know that to be Karma Yoga Pandava. Because anyone who has not given up desires for limited results like heaven, etc., does not become a Karma Yogi. See, desirelessness is the mark of renunciation, is already well known, well established. Everybody knows the sannyasi is desireless, at least supposed to be desireless. The only doubt is there with respect to the active person, a person who is living a religious life, a person who is living an active life, doing the duty, the things necessary to be done. It might look like the person is caught in desires, but if the person is a Karma Yogi, he is not caught in desires. Even there, the quality of renunciation is emphasized. So, in Karma Yoga also, renunciation is not negotiable. Karma Yoga also can be considered as renunciation because the Karma Yogi is desireless with respect to the results of action. That is the spirit of the teaching here. What they say as renunciation, yam sannyasam iti prahur yogam tam vidhi pandava. Nahyas sanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kachana. Because anybody who has not given up the desires and the sankalpa, that person does not become a Karma Yogi. One cannot become a Karma Yogi unless one gives up the desire for the results. Arurukshor munir yogam karma karanam uchyate. Yoga arudasya tastyaiva shamah karanam uchyate. This also we saw last class. For the discriminating person wishing to attain the contemplative disposition of yoga, of meditation, Karma Yoga is said to be the means. For the person who has already attained this yoga of dhyana, total renunciation alone is said to be the means. Means sadhana, karanam sadhana. What is going to take you to what you want to achieve? The Karma Yogi has to achieve the steadiness of mind. The sannyasi has to achieve the freedom, or the renunciate who has the knowledge has to achieve the steadiness in the knowledge. For a renunciate who has or the one who has already arrived at the maturity, the method to be adopted is complete renunciation in total. Not only renunciation in attitude, but practical renunciation also is recommended. If you are already a contemplative person, you are recommended to renounce. Renunciation is appropriate for you. If you are not a mature person, if you are not a person capable of good meditation, if you are not a meditative person who is already relaxed inside, then may you take to Karma Yoga. That is the means for you to arrive at the meditativeness. That is that. And then the next one. When one is attached neither to sense objects nor to actions, then that person is said to be the one who has attained liberation. The one who has renounced the cause of all desires. Yadahi ne indriyartheshu na karma swan sajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhas tadauchyate. Yogarudha means the one who is well established in the yoga. The one who has attained yoga here means the person who has liberation. Yoga established in the yoga of knowledge, which means the person is liberated. Here it means liberation. The one who is neither attached to the objects of senses nor to actions. Na indriyarteshu na karma swanusajjate. Not attached to the action here can mean absolute detachment to the result of action. And it can also mean no sense of doership. It can also mean that. And a person who is having the knowledge is considered established when the person has no sense of doership. But the same person, there is a sense of doership, then it is to be told as the person not attached to the result of action. And also the person is not attached to the objects of the senses, means there is no desire, active desire to experience things. The sense of fulfillment does not depend upon sensory experiences. The sense of fulfillment does not depend upon accomplishments and ownership over different things. So So the fulfillment is not dependent on external things. So when do I know I am liberated? See, liberation is an experience. Okay, liberation is an experience. Self-realization is an understanding. Enlightenment is liberation. The person who has self-knowledge is liberated. Liberated while you are being alive. So you have to taste that liberation. The liberation is tasted as an experience. You experience freedom from bondage. So I am liberated. How do you know you are liberated? Am I liberated? The question, if you ask, that means you are not liberated. Okay. So how do a person know that I am committed to the knowledge enough? If you are committed to the knowledge, there will be no active attachment to any object of the senses. And there will be no sense of bondage in action. If you have nothing to do, you will not itch for doing something. If you have a lot of things to do, you will not think that you will not feel bound or worked up because a lot of things are there to be done. Presence of action does not destroy your peace. Absence of action does not make you restless. A workaholic is attached to action. A liberated person is not attached to action. The liberated person is not attached to action. Why? Because the liberated person is not attached to any object of desire. If you are attached to an object of desire, your desire will drive you to action. There are two things that we have. In our experience, there are two dimensions. One is the bhoktrutvam, I am the enjoyer. Another is the kartrutvam, I am the doer. Every time you feel compelled to act in a certain manner, you feel compelled to do this or do that, which means there is an active desire behind it. If there is an active desire behind it that compels you to do, we have to learn to do the action while doing the action to develop the Ishvara Pita Buddhi. While we are doing the action, when we develop the attitude of offering to the Lord, doing the action as an offering to the Lord, then what happens? You will develop detachment to the result of action. Detachment will grow in the background. So that is why Karma Yoga is prescribed, because every active attachment to a mode of action means there is attachment to some kind of enjoyment. That is why there is an urgency to act. So while I am acting, I don't understand why I am so restless and I want to keep doing stuff. So what I do, whenever I am doing an action, it looks like I am attached to something. Okay. See, when I am busy, when I want to get busy, when I get motivated to do something, apparently it looks like I want to do it for this purpose. But behind that, there are so many layers of desires that I am not aware of. That is why when we start doing something, after some time we feel this is not what I want something else. Why do we feel like that? Because the actual desire gets covered up with all the complications of the life around. So I think I want it because of such and such a reason. But actually, I want something else. I was not given the opportunity and the time to become conscious of what I actually want. So, whenever I am doing action, let me not take the result of action very seriously, because that is not exactly what I am looking for. Ultimately, if you ask what a person is looking for, is happiness, not anything. No matter what you desire, in everything that you desire only satisfaction. You don't desire the object. Where every desire that you have, you only desire the satisfaction of that desire. I want motorbike. I want TV. I want plasma TV. I want the latest summer collection. I want to go to America. Whatever is the desire that you have. I want to buy a new car. I will be happy if I get that. When you say that, you are not wanting that. You are wanting the experience of satisfaction that comes when the desire gets satisfied. Where in that moment, you are not a wanting person anymore. Only when you are not a wanting person anymore, you say, I am happy. So what happens? What are you actually looking for? You are looking for being a person who is not a wanting person anymore. You are just waiting for the experience where you are not a wanting person anymore. So this is what I am actually looking for. So when I understand this, I understand that the happiness that I am looking for is not in the objects. But still, the force is there. The force of habit doesn't go. Old habits die hard. So I am a very avid doer, and I am not able to discern the desires much because I am not meditative yet. So what I do? While I am doing action, I renounce the desire and I offer the desires to the Lord. So I dissociate myself from the results of action. I don't do because of desire, and I don't do things also. Doesn't mean whatever I want to do, I will do and renounce the desire. No. Here, an active person, a person who is not yet meditative, a person who is not yet meditative is encouraged to be busy doing the right thing. You are not asked to renounce. If you are a restless person, don't do vipassana. Okay? If you are already a meditative person, do vipassana. If you are a restless person, keep busy doing the right thing and little bit vipassana. Then it makes sense. I want to meditate. I am very restless. Let me meditate. No. If you are very restless, do something that is part of your duty. A classical example is these village women. They have a lot of wisdom. Old women, village women, they have a lot of wisdom. In India, these grannies, these ladies in the village, when they get angry, they don't know what to do. All the old brass vessels will be there. Copper vessels, brass vessels in the attic. They will bring it all down and start washing it. I think a similar thing must be there in Romania also. No? If you have nothing to do, they will start, I don't know, making pickles or something else. No? Some useful action. And then your mind is not busy thinking all that nonsense. So all the anger, emotion, the village life has you are full of duties. So you just get busy doing your duties. And while you are busy doing your duties, develop the right attitude. Nurture the right attitude in the background. One simple thing is, I have to clean the house. Who wants to clean the house? Nobody. If everybody can have Ashimo Robo, everybody would have it. Unfortunately, it is so expensive, all of us cannot have it. So what you have to do your job. So what can I do? While doing the job, I can do Nama Sankirtana. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, sweep. Washing vessels, sing something, tell something, chant something. When you keep doing these things, these Nama Sankirtana, these divine names, Ganga, Bhavani, Gayatri, Kali, Lakshmi, Saraswati, like that. There are different things. So if your deity is there, whatever is your deity, the deity has different names. And there are these 10 names and 16 names for every deity. So you have to catch that from some kind of a Purana and then memorize it and keep repeating it, or some shloka, something. So my granny used to cook all the time chanting slokas. The food has a special flavor because cooking a lot of Saundari Lagari, Lalita Sahasranam, so many of sloka has gone into that food. So all the vibration is there. Not only you purify your environment, you purify your attitude. So when you purify your attitude, that is backing that. When you do that, what happens? You reinforce your likes and dislikes. But at the same time, you develop the attitude of offering to the Lord, to your deity, whatever you are doing. Not simply by meditating, you don't close your eyes and do pranayama. Just start chanting. And when you do that attitude, and thinking, oh, I'm going to do this and it will come out very well and then I can offer to the deity and God will be very happy. These kind of things. Then I can offer this to all those people who are hungry. When all this thinking goes into the action, the sattva shuddhi, the attitude gets purified. When the attitude gets purified, you become a naturally a relaxed person. When you become a naturally relaxed person, you become capable of meditation. When you sit to meditate, mind stops. You are not going all around anymore. You don't have to fight with your emotion. You don't have to fight with your desires anymore. Because you are naturally a relaxed person. How you are naturally a relaxed person? Because the grabbing attitude in the background is not there anymore. A go-getter, result-oriented go-getter can never be a meditator. Meditation also becomes another target for the person. No? I have to finish 20 cycles pranayama today. I have to do 1 hour meditation. I have to do 1000 Surya Namaskar, 100 Surya Namaskar. All these very ambitious yoga people are there. They are always having a target. Every day I will do, no, this time I have to meditate. Then I have to get the silence. Try to push it. Not. Basic relaxed attitude only can give you the meditation. This result orientedness does not work in spirituality. Just to be, the Westerner has to remember this very clearly. I can be result oriented in so many things, but if I want peace and happiness, I cannot be result oriented. I have to be attitude oriented in every process. Then the mind becomes available for the process and there is no rush behind the result and the mind becomes relaxed. So this is the essence of Karma Yoga. That is why he is saying renunciation. Okay. Now, when I am naturally, so the essence of this fourth sloka, when one is attached neither to the sense objects nor to the actions, then that person is said to be the one who has attained liberation, the one who has renounced the cause of all desires. What is the cause of all desires? The cause of all desires is the sense of the being a wanting person, the doership and enjoyership, ignorance. Yoga Tadocchate. It's a very important sloka. Let us see the commentary of Shankaracharya on this. Sarva Sankalpa means I want this, I want that. That is the cause of all the problem. You know that Sankalpa means wanting or desiring a specific thing. You know, before the puja I do know. For this purpose I perform this ritual. So what is the purpose? We always invoke only Jnana Vairagya Dhyam Siddhyartham for the purpose of acquiring wisdom and detachment and for the purpose of acquiring dispassion and quietness of the mind, purity of the mind, Chitta Shuddhi. So when I don't have any obvious sankalpa, when I don't have any obvious wish, the action becomes a means for purification of the mind. So concentrate yada samadhiyamana chitta yogi indriyarteshu indriyanam arthaha shabdaya. Concentrating his mind when the sage ceases to be attached to, gives up the sense of objects like sound, etc. When he is no longer attached to action, obligatory, contingent, desire prompted and forbidden. He is bringing all kinds of action here. As he has no purpose of his own to be realized by the means of them and ceases to pursue them, then trained to discard all the mental constructions, the cause of desire here and hereafter, he has scaled the peak of yoga by the virtue of the expression discarding all mental constructions. Sankalpa, okay. It follows that one must discard all desires and actions. Indeed, all desires are rooted in mental constructions. Desire is rooted in mental constructions. Sacrifices are said to be born of mental constructions. Here giving a lot of quoting here. Sankalpa mulaha kamo vai yajaha sankalpa sambhavaha kamajana nite mulam sankalpa kilajayate natvam sankalpayishyami samulo na bhavishyasi ityadi smrite. Here Acharya is quoting a lot of smritis here. Desire is rooted in mental constructions. Sacrifices are said to be born of mental constructions. I know in what you are rooted, you are born of mental constructions. I shall not set you up mentally, then you will have no root to support you. And the next one. Once all the desires are discarded, renunciation of action follows. He feels according to his desire, he acts according to his desire, he acts according to. And similar Upanishadic utterances, also passages like the following statement. All that a living being does is the work of desire. Reason to support this view. And indeed made so much as still one's mental concept. Therefore, the Lord's expression discarding all now applies all to give up all desires and access. Thus, the yoga's peak being in scale, the self becomes lifted up by the self above all empirical turmoil. What is explained as the ultimate accomplishment of yoga? Ultimate accomplishment of I have achieved the result of yoga. I have done all that needs to be done. There is nothing more to be done. Means the mind, when your mind is naturally. So how do I know that I am liberated? When my mind is naturally not seeking any time-bound result. You don't get worked up to get this and get that, to achieve this, to achieve that, Your mind is not actively seeking anything, here or hereafter. You just respond to life as it comes, and you are just, if you are an active person, you are busy doing the essential work. Other than that, you don't do anything unessential. You don't look for doing something. You don't aspire to achieve something. There is no need. There is no sense of need. If I am active, my activity does not come from a need centered on my individuality. Okay? If I am an active person, my actions don't come as a consequence of the sense of need. So, I am qualified to renounce. Or, I am living a renunciant lifestyle where I have no commitments. I am not working for anything, I am not looking for anything. So, this is the state of renunciation where the mind does not look for anything in time, in space. Does not look for any specific experience. This state is a liberated state. The liberated person is like this. This is told here. Then the person has lifted the self by one's own self. The self has arisen out of all mundane preoccupation. The mind is not preoccupied with anything mundane. So what is lifting up oneself? Because the next verse is a very important verse. It says, Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam navasadaye natmanam avasadaye atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmana. May one lift oneself by oneself. May one not destroy oneself. For the self alone is one's benefactor and the self alone is one's enemy. Now, uplift yourself by your own self. What does it mean? Owning up the freedom that is your nature. Uplifting your own self means getting in touch with the freedom that is my nature. When I uplift myself by myself, it means myself is not lost in all kinds of mundane preoccupations. I am not lost in any kind of mundane preoccupation. And my sense of self is above all the different concerns of the world. The sense of self is not affected by what is to be acquired and preserved. The sense of self is free. That is what it means, lifting the self by oneself. Not manana avasade. Don't act against your own welfare. Don't be your own enemy. Don't act against your own welfare. Acting against your own welfare means what? Allowing yourself to be more and more bound into the patterns of action and desire. Klesha karma. Getting more and more bound into habit patterns, getting more and more bound into the different pursuits of different time-bound desires. This is losing yourself. Because you are your own friend, you are your own. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhu. If the self is the one, the self is the supreme benefactor. Because the self is the source of the supreme happiness. You are the source of your happiness. You are the source of your ultimate comfort if you realize your true nature. If you are going to define yourself based on different time-bound accomplishments, I will be happy if, I will be sad if. No. You are all the time defining yourself, I am a successful person if. I am a failure if I don't. Like this, if I am constantly defining myself based on mundane, time-bound conditions, the self is one's own enemy. You are your own enemy. There are people who say, no, I hate myself. When they say I hate myself, what do they mean? They hate the fact that they feel nobody hates oneself. So, people hate being in a certain, they hate themselves being in a certain manner. They don't like themselves to be in a certain way. Somebody was very, very irresponsible and ended up being in a lot of debt. Right? Lot of debt and lot of problems and full mess. I want to die. Why? I hate myself. I hate my life. I hate myself. I'm not good enough. I'm going to die. By dying, can you get rid of yourself? Okay, you get rid of some situations, but the patterns continue. So I said, okay, what is your problem? I have 100,000 euros debt. I happen to be a billionaire. Then I say, okay, I give you 100,000 euros, clear all your debt, start your life fresh. Really? No? Immediately the mind brightens up. I'll solve all this, no problem, I'm your friend, so it's okay, cool. But then I give a logic also. The person should not feel guilty, should not feel bad. I say, see, the banks are all, Bank of Iceland went bankrupt. General Motors went bankrupt. If somebody is bailing them out with billions of dollars, you are a good guy, it's okay, you made some mistakes, some long investment, whatever. You lost a lot of money. So what? I have money, I'll bail you out. Government will not bail out. The government wants to bail out only those who exploit society. They will not bail you out. I'll bail you out, don't worry. What is the big deal? Complete the whole attitude, everything changes. Then gets a new hope. Okay, I'm going to try this time, I'm going to work, I will be intelligent and I will invest wisely and this time I'm going to make money. The whole urge for life comes up. Where was it, sir, before? You wanted to die, you hate yourself, and then a little bit of pep talk, solving some problems and a little bit of pep talk, suddenly the whole confidence and everything comes. See, it happens in this coaching and all that, no? When they do this counseling and coaching, the person goes to. Then when it comes up, after attending this self-help group and all that, the person is walking like this. I found this energy. That means what? All the desire is sleeping inside. So why are you trying to hate yourself? Nobody hates oneself when everything is according to one's desire. A person hates oneself only when everything is not according to one's desire. This is the fact. So when you are in a low, just all that you have to see is, I have become my own enemy. The self has become my own enemy. Why I have become my own enemy? Or I have become the cause of my own sorrow. Why? Because I defined myself based on situations. I defined myself based on time-bound accomplishments. I defined myself based on perishable things. So how do I become my own friend? How do I make myself become my own benefactor? How can I make the self the cause of happiness? The self is the cause of suffering if the self becomes limited and lost in an ignorance trip. The self becomes the benefactor. The self becomes the source of infinite happiness if the self regains its true nature in the quest for truth. When the self lets go of all the preoccupations and desires, and the self becomes free from the clutches of desires, the self becomes free from the clutches of sankalpa, from all the aims and ambitions and desires. The self becomes free from all the compulsive patterns, and the self is available to look at one's own self. The self is available for contemplation and teaching, and then the self becomes the source of happiness. That's what he is saying here. May you be devoted to your own happiness and not go against your own interest. Uddharet atmanatmanam. Uplift yourself by your own self. Let us see what Acharya's commentary is here. Scale the peak of yoga. Make yourself attain the peak of yoga. What is the peak of yoga? Freedom from all desires. Freedom from being a wanting person. There is no, when we are talking about liberation, when our goal is liberation, there is no legitimate desire. For a normal person, There is the talk of valid desire, invalid desire, These are all irrational desires. These are all rational desires, acceptable desires, normal desires. It's okay to have them. What's wrong in having? Let's have an ice cream. It's okay to have a desire to have an ice cream. It is okay to have an ice cream. But it is not okay to actively desire an ice cream. Then what happens when the ice cream is not there? I lose my mood. I remember. Once, 3 weeks before, there was a pineapple ice cream. In that ice cream, nice, very nice pineapple. That day I tasted a little bit, it was fantastic. But I had already ordered some other scoop, so I didn't want to have 2 ice creams. So I said, next week I will have pineapple ice cream. I planned for the pineapple ice cream. Nice pineapple ice cream. The next week I go there, I ordered pineapple ice cream. This week the pineapple ice cream did not come out well. My karma. Pineapple ice cream was not okay. The moment I see the pineapple ice cream is not the same taste, immediately the mind comes up with a disappointment. All the way, not okay. No. Now it looks like a very silly problem. But this pattern of investing your satisfaction on an external condition, if it goes without inquiry, you allow it to just pass and don't process it, it gets a little bit reinforced. It is like dust piling up. I sweep the house today, very clean, nice. Evening you see, a coat of dust, you don't see. Tomorrow. Next day. Today only I cleaned the house. What is that? It all looks clean. The next day, little bit dust you are able to see. One small hair is flying. Another day. Suddenly 3 days, 4 days gone, suddenly you see, you look like this, the sunlight is coming beautifully through the eastern window, and it's on the floor. You look from the other room, the floor has a thick coating of dust with a lot of cotton-like things flying around, and some hair, and a lot of objects you never thought it existed in your house. So many things are on the floor. How did it happen like this? Have 1 cup tea. I was later. 1 cup porridge. I was later. Then suddenly I see there are 10 vessels, cooking vessels, and there are 20 cups and dishes for washing. The sink is full. Suddenly there is no space to put in the sink. Similarly, I allow this small pineapple ice cream. What is that pineapple ice cream? I am not the enjoyer anyway. Then little bit irritation is there. I don't process it. I leave it. Slowly it piles up. And one fine morning, there is a lot of anger at everything around. I don't know why. Because I did not investigate the desired structure. I allowed myself to be lost in the patterns. I allowed myself to invest the satisfaction in all the kinds of things. So this loose attitude regarding one's own desires and different sense of need that comes in the name of legitimizing a desire. When the more and more you legitimize a desire, the more and more the bondage structure is building. Slowly you are putting one chain by one chain and you don't watch, and suddenly you find you are in a huge jail, completely chained to every limb, and you are not available for yourself anymore. The mind has taken your life for a ride. Suddenly you find full of desires, wanting this and wanting that, and you are like a hungry ghost. Body is old, it cannot it cannot enjoy anymore. Then you run for Viagra, then you run for some lottery ticket, then you run for this, you run behind that, and then you die frustrated, then you hang around as a hungry ghost. This is what happens. How did they end up like that? Because they did not investigate that little one desire. And they allowed it. They took it for granted. That is what he says. May you be devoted. Uplift yourself means may you be committed to this task of becoming free from the clutches of desire. Means may you devote yourself to this task of arriving at the maturity where you are not a wanting person anymore. I am talking about even the casual wants. Forget these deep-seated wants. Want for relationship, want for a house, security, want for specific pleasures. If I don't have the right company and the right party in the weekend, my life is not worth. I am not a normal person anymore. These are all very false values here. We don't have such problems in India, not yet, no? At least. We have in the cities, big cities like Delhi, Mumbai, we have. In the villages, we don't have this problem yet. But still it's coming. Okay, there are other things, there are very so-called very practical things. I should have a good family, I should have a good house, I should have good facilities, comfort, good respect in the society. These also, the Shastra tells you, don't depend on these for happiness. Don't look for all these things. If it is there, doesn't matter. Just let it go. So here, that's what he says. Pull yourself upwards from the sea of samsara. Make yourself scale the peak of yoga. This is the idea. Do not weaken or push it down. What push it down? Do not push down your sense of self. Don't weaken your sense of self. Means not to weaken yourself. Means not to develop more and more dependency. Do not reinforce your dependencies. Right? Self alone is one's friend. No other friend is there who may promote one's liberation from this transmigratory life. If you want liberation from samsara, you have to get it. Don't look for some Mataji, some Pitaji, some Baba, some Amma to drop your liberation. There was this big Baba in India. When you see this Baba going in the golden chariot, you will be liberated. Whoever sees Baba going in the golden chariot, this is their last life. Huge crowd, millions of people in that one village. And this person is coming in the golden chariot. Okay, you saw what happened, this is all your last life. So then you go hanging behind all that. You don't develop the maturity to work with yourself. Then what happens? You become a victim of the hope industry. There is another guy dying to save your life, give you salvation. Somebody died to save you. There is another guy who is promising you, if you go around some stone, telling I am here for you, I am here for you, I am here, go once and come back, and then you believe in that thing, then you die, you are saved. Otherwise you are in hell. Then there is another person telling, chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna will save you. Surrender to Lord Krishna, Krishna will save you. So like this, all kinds of mark. Then this fellow says, I will liberate you. Why fear when I am here? Guru. By Guru's grace, because the Shastra says, by Guru's grace alone one can get liberation, which means teaching. Only by the grace, Guru's grace means the Guru gives you the teaching. And through the teaching and reflection and dedication alone, you will get the grace. There are also other things. When you will get the right Guru? Only when your mind has gone beyond the likes and dislikes. Only when the mind is not affected by negative and positive karma anymore. When the mind has acquired the ability to contemplate. And when you are a person together. And when you have this clear ascertainment that I want only liberation and nothing else. Then you will see the Sadguru. Whoever calls himself Sadguru need not be Sadguru. Okay? So, it is not an easy thing to find the best Guru who will just give you, just by telling you one word, immediately you realize the freedom that is your nature. That is not an easy task. It doesn't come so easily. You have to work for it. So, if you want an admission in some local university which is waiting for students, you give some money and then you get admitted. It's very easy. You want to get into Ivy League, you have to give a lot of money, or you have to get the top scores in GRE, GMAT and TOEFL and all that. Otherwise you don't get admission. Top university, if you want to get the top university admission, if you want to get admitted into MIT for technology, you have to produce a paper, you have to do a research before getting admitted. These are all not easy things. Similarly, any category, you want the highest things, you have to qualify yourself. So if don't become a victim of hope industry, no hope industry can deliver liberation. Shastra is very clear. If you want liberation, you have to liberate yourself. Nobody is going to liberate you here. If you liberate yourself, if you are dedicated to liberate yourself, universe will come in with all the help that is required. Okay? Without making what is to be done on your end, without your dedication for your own liberation, where from the help will come for your own liberation? You may say, there are these stories, okay? There was a saint, a person very famous saint, in his earlier life, he was a very indulgent man. He used to go to prostitutes, he used to eat meat and drink alcohol and loaf around. And then suddenly one day he realized he is completely useless and he has ruined his life. He gets frustrated. He wants to end his life. He goes to the top of a temple tower and falls from there. And Lord Subramanya comes and saves him and then gives him the Diksha and makes him a great Siddha. He becomes Arunagirinath. Right? This story we read. Like this, there are a lot of stories where the Lord comes and makes an interference and saves the person from samsara. Then you are also, God will come for me also. There is a story. There is a problem. There was a guru and a lot of disciples were there. They had a problem. Discussion among them, debate, jealousy debate. Lord Vishnu is very partial. We are all doing so much of austerity and everything. Look at my beard has grown, I have matted hair and all that. I have been meditating. My body has become thin like a stick. So much of austerity I have done. Lord Vishnu doesn't give me the vision, divine vision anymore. But this little boy, Dhruva, he just sat. In 7 days, Lord Vishnu gave him the vision. So partial, because Dhruva took birth in his lineage. Because Vishnu took this avatar of Lord Rama, in that Raghuvamsa, in that lineage, this Dhruva took birth. Because this fellow belongs to his lineage, that is why he was partial. Vishnu is not having equality towards everybody. That is why he gave him vision so easily. The Guru was hearing all that. Okay. He didn't say. Then they asked, Master, what do you say? This is our conclusion that Vishnu is partial. Okay, I'll tell you. Let's go for a ride in the boat. And they go for a ride in the boat. And then they go for some distance. And there is an island. In that island, full of ant hills, huge ant hills, 6 feet ant hills. Like hundreds of them. They say, what is this island? We never saw. And also it feels very peaceful, very serene, very uplifting to be here. What is this place, Guruji? And then he said, this is the island where the Dhruva you were talking about, he was doing tapas in his past lives. Every life he used to do tapas, attain samadhi. Then he will be born somewhere. Somehow he will discover this island and come and do tapasya here. Each ant hill is one life. He used to sit and meditate and the ant hill grows over him. So much tapasya he has done for so many lives. So in this life when he was born as Dhruva, when he was a small boy, the moment he sat in 7 days, Lord Vishnu gave vision. So without all the homework, how Vishnu will give you vision? You don't see all those things. So these are all there behind in the account. Vishnu is not partial. Ishvara, God is understood as Karma Phala Data. He delivers the result of your actions. Whatever virtuous actions that you have done in this life, they will bear result in the next life. So if anybody seems to have an extraordinary privilege in their life, it means they have earned it. If I don't get the right thing at the right time, maybe I have not done enough punya for that. Okay? But when I get something very easily, I should not think I got it. I should think, I don't know I was deserving or not. It's God's grace. Because of God's grace I got it. That is the way to think for the one who got it. But the one who did not get it, if I devote myself to uplifting myself, no matter no matter at what level I am, if I start taking one step towards liberation, God will also take one step towards my liberation. So the nature will also help me. Nature will help me only if I am ready to help myself. Otherwise, life will not help me. So let me devote to uplifting myself. So the things does not come, in a platter. So if somebody seems to have an extraordinary intervention, divine intervention in their spiritual journey, it is because they have done work before. So this person must have been a great yogi called Yoga Bhrashta, they say. They try to arrive at, you will see later in Bhagavad Gita, it comes. A person embarks on the journey towards liberation and achieves to some extent, but somehow is not able to achieve the perfection, the liberation, and then dies. What happens? In the next birth, the person is born in a very privileged family, gets all the teachings in the young age itself, and the Lord personally takes care of the person's need, and the person is put on the right track and continues from where they left. Promise is given in Bhagavad Gita. It is not a promise given in Bhagavad Gita. It is not Krishna's promise. It is just a statement based on the law of karma as stated in the Veda. Because Bhagavad Gita is only delivering the essential wisdom of the Veda. Bhagavad Gita is not Lord Krishna's fantasy or Lord Krishna's self-proclamation of all the great things that he can do. Whoever believes in me, I will liberate. No, he doesn't say that. What he says is, whoever understands Ishvara will get liberated. After telling you everything, he says, please do as you like. This is the teaching. So, may you be devoted to your own welfare. There is no shortcut to liberation. The more effort and dedication you put in, the better is the result. It is directly proportional. There is no shortcut. Don't look for shortcuts. Somebody touches your head and then, some Kundalini goes up and then everything becomes easy. It doesn't work like that. Everything becomes more complicated. Kundalini is like an amplifier. I have a lot of mental noise waiting to come out. Low voltage, no problem. There is a horrible music going on. The volume is very less. It doesn't disturb much. The wrong music tape is going on. I suddenly pull up the volume. What happens? You hear only noise. In the same way, if I am a cracked tape here, if I am a cracked CD-ROM here, if I raise my Kundalini, it's going to create more noise. It's not going to solve the problem. So there is no shortcut for Chitta Suddhi. If you think you leave all your responsibilities and go to meditate and not attending on what you are supposed to do, it is going to give you more trouble than doing what you are supposed to do. It is better to be a busy person with the right attitude than to try to escape into a meditative atmosphere, going for this meditation camp, going for that meditation camp, not taking care of your everyday duties, and then you come back and so much of work is piled up, then you scratch your head, this horrible life, this samsara, I don't like this, I want to leave everything and go and simply sit and meditate. Then you go and sit and meditate, you don't meditate. Then you go poke your nose on everything. A lot of people are there. Many girls from the West, they come to India. I want to study Vedanta. They end up getting pregnant with somebody. Either if they are lucky enough, they get married. If they are not lucky, they'll go back with the baby. Hundreds of cases. It's not a joke. Some Kashmiri guy, some this guy, some shop guy, they pick up somebody, they cannot keep quiet. Because they don't have discipline, fundamental discipline. All these junkies you will see in Rishikesh and everywhere. This Netherlands, Israel, Brazil, all the junkies will be there. Wearing on backpack and going around. They don't know where they will hang around. They will be in the cremation ground. Women are not supposed to go to cremation ground. You will not see one Indian woman there. If you go to Varanasi, you will not see one Indian woman there. Only foreign ladies. All the European women, American women, they are all standing there. Indian men will be there because men have stuff to do there. They are there. If you don't have stuff to do, you don't need to be there. Right? And if you are a woman, you are not supposed to go to cremation ground. And full of these white ladies. What? They have nothing to do. Junkie mind. So what happens? It's very, very easy to get lost into the junkie mind. So if you leave your essential commitments and try to escape into some altered reality, you get some free marijuana, you get, become a friend of some wandering mendicant. They are all smoking marijuana, okay? And they are in that high. They are not anything serious. Most of them are just drug addicts. Pure drug addicts in a different clothing. Interesting clothing, that's all. Then what happens? You go sit with them. You see, time with sadhus and yogis in India, you put in YouTube. You will see all these junkies going on with these naked sadhus, the ones with all, with all the ash, staying naked, smoking marijuana. They will not find any other sadhu. They will not find a normal sadhu. They will not find a normal, educated, people who are traditional and doing their stuff and balanced. They cannot find all that. They will only find all these extreme cases, sitting on nails, and doing all kinds of funny austerities, no study, nothing, and talking some weird philosophy and losing oneself into drug trips. They go behind all that. Why? Because the mind looks for escapism. There is no escape. Leaving everything and becoming a monk, you will not solve your problem. There are these traditions who are doling out monkhood like, selling, what is it? Like fast food. Selling fast food, become a monk. Whoever comes, make them a monk. Pull them, give them a rope, shave their head, make them some monks, nuns, everybody. Then you make a show. 3,000 monks, ordination ceremony. Then you do all this chanting, everybody coming in a straight line, and it looks like a good show. Good show for your organization, you'll get sponsorship and all that. What happened to all those fellows who are not, up to the qualification to become a monk? They end up as rice bags. That is why the Shastra does not give you any escape, no escape. If you go to Vedanta, there is no escape. You have to do your karma, you have to develop the attitude, only then you can do upasana. Only when you can do upasana, you can take sannyasa. It is not easy. That is why Arjuna, you know who is Arjuna? The Lord is talking to Arjuna here. You know who is Arjuna? Arjuna is the top archer in the world. You know what is his level of concentration? There is a test when he was a child, okay, not when he grew up, when he was a child. There is a Guru says, that the archery teacher says, there is that blue bird in that tree there, 300 yards away. See that? You have to hit that with the arrow. He puts one blue bird there and like in the tree, archery lesson. You have to hit the arrow. Then one person comes. What do you see? I see the beautiful blue sky, the trees, and all the other birds flying, and then go. Next person. What do you see? I see the branch on which the blue bird is there, and then I see the branch in the blue bird. Not bad. Go. Next. And finally, Arjuna comes. What do you see? Do you see the sky? No. Do you see the tree? No. Do you see the branch? No. Do you see the blue bird? Not exactly. What do you see? I see the eye of the blue bird. The bird which you said, I see its eye. Good, shoot. And then he shoots. This is Arjuna. And then he goes and tries to get one missile, one divine weapon called Pashupatashtra. The Astra, divine weapon which is based on Lord Shiva's mantra. Okay? Lord Shiva's weapon it is. It's one of the most powerful divine weapons. So he does tapasya to get that because the warfare is coming and he has to be equipped. And then he gets that. He does tapasya standing on one leg and all that. Very serious austerity. And then Lord Shiva comes. He fights with Lord Shiva because Lord Shiva wants to have the delight of fighting with Arjuna because he is the best archer. So he is playing with him for some time. And then he sees he is not able to win over this hunter. Lord Shiva comes as a hunter. Somehow he is not able to win this hunter. Who is this guy? There is nobody on earth who can defeat me. Then he understands, who are you? And then he falls at the feet and asks, please tell me who are you? You are not a normal hunter. Then Lord Shiva gives permission and blesses him with a weapon. So this is Arjuna. This Arjuna goes into despondency. Not some escapist normal guy. Achiever means he is the top achiever. Girls, he has all the girls. Okay? Arjuna is considered as the best Casanova of his time. Warfare, cavalier, fighting, best archer in the world. If he has to put himself on, if one Arjuna comes, then entire army will tremble in their feet. That is his level of power. Okay? He's like a one-man army. He goes into despondency. Why? All this is not enough unless you cultivate an attitude. That is the teaching. Okay? So, the Vedanta is not for weak people. Weak people cannot get liberation. If you are a weakling, shaking in your legs for everything, you cannot get liberation. If you are getting, every little thing in life upsets you, you are nowhere close to liberation. Getting upset with life, you cannot get to renunciation. Liberation is not a replacement for your corporate goals, family goals. I am not able to get anything, so I will get liberation. It doesn't work like that. I can get whatever I want, but what's the point? I don't see sense in anything other than liberation. Then it's okay. So liberation, this escapism will not work. That is why it's a very clear path. Karma, upasana, dhyana. There is no shortcut. That is why he is saying, may you strive for. There is no other friend who may promote one's liberation from this transmigratory life. Even a relationship which is being the seat of emotions like attachment and joy, etc., which makes for bondage, it may prove adverse. The stress is in the expressions. The self indeed is the friend of the self. The self alone is the adversary. Any other external adversary also is impelled by the self. If you think some other external condition is acting against you, that is also affecting you fundamentally because of your own self. So only my sense of self that I nurture decides whether I am going in the path of liberation or I am going in the path of bondage. No matter what is your situation, may I be devoted to the only purpose which is liberation, the only worthy purpose across every situation of my life, so that I grow from karma to upasana, from upasana to jnana, from action with the right attitude, karma yoga, to being a meditator, from being a meditator to the one who is qualified for liberation through wisdom, qualified for wisdom which is liberation. Then the next one. What kind of self is the friend and what kind of self is the enemy? Here is the answer. Bandhuratma manastasya yonatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. The self is the friend of that self by which the self has been subdued. The self alone operates as the enemy of one's unsubdued by the self. The Swamiji's translation. Bandhur atmanastasya yena atmaiva atmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. For that self, for that person who has mastered oneself by oneself, the self alone is a friend of oneself. Whereas, for a person who has not mastered oneself, the self alone would remain in the status of an enemy, like an enemy. Mastering oneself means mastering the movements of the mind, shamadama, etc. Mastering one's habit patterns, mastering one's ego constructions. Unless for a person who has self-mastery, one's own self becomes the self because your own mind becomes the vehicle for liberation. There is a saying in the Smriti, Manayeva Manushyanam Karanam Bandha Mokshayoho. Mind alone is the reason for the bondage and the liberation of man, of people. So if the mind is trained and taken care and disciplined and put on the path of self-mastery, the mind becomes an instrument of liberation. If the mind is put in the path of indulgence and forgetfulness and lack of determination and losing oneself in all kinds of situations, the mind alone becomes the cause of one's own misery. How the mind works? Mind is only a machine. It is like telling, I drive the car in the wrong road, it takes me to trouble. I drive the car in the right road, it takes me to the destination. So the car can be one's own friend and one's own enemy. There are a lot of people who drive irresponsibly and get accident and break their head. There are a lot of people who use the locomotive for everyday purposes and they make so many things easy. So can I blame the locomotive? The problem is the driver. So don't blame the mind. The problem is my understanding, the attitude and the self-construct with which I use the mind. If I reinforce my wrong self-construct, which is based on ignorance, I am going to become my own enemy. If I investigate the wrong self-construct, which is based on ignorance, in the light of the teachings and slowly develop self-mastery so that I am available for the right vision of myself, then I become my own friend. That is the teaching. The subdued self is the conglomerate of the effect of the instruments, body, etc. So, Atma Bandhu Yena Atmana Atma Eva Jitaha Atma Karya Karana Sanghatha Yena Vashikritaha Jitendriyaha Ityartaha. The mastered self means the person who has overcome the compulsions of the sense faculties, the mind and the habit patterns. And the person who has not overcome the inner compulsions, likes and dislikes becomes so-and-so end. That's right. The Supreme Self is concentrated for one who has subdued the self. Jitatmanaha prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shitoshta sukha dukkheshu tatha manapamanayoho. Very good. So this is a very important verse. For the one who has mastery over oneself, verse number 7, chapter. For a person who has self-mastery, whose mind is quiet and tranquil with reference to heat and cold, pleasure and pain, praise and criticism, praise and censure. We should not use criticism because criticism is a very positive thing. Praise and censure, the mind is always in a state of composure. Paramatma samahita. One whose tranquility, okay, your inner equilibrium, your inner balance and tranquility is such that it's so well established that superficial experiences of life like pain and pleasure, heat and cold, that means heat and cold refers to the body, physical disturbances, psychological disturbances, egoistic disturbances, pain and pleasure, sorrow, difficulties, etc. So different experiences of life centered on the body, the mind and the buddhi. Buddhi means somebody tells, oh you are great, and you feel, somebody says, oh you are, I have never seen another reckless idiot like you, then you feel, oh. Because my sense of self suffers. So my tranquility is not to be disturbed by the different experiences that the body undergoes, that the mind undergoes and the buddhi undergoes. Buddhi here means the ego. Ego is because of the buddhi, a certain idea about myself. So because of all this, my tranquility is not disturbed. The inner balance is not disturbed. Even if it apparently is disturbed, you come back to your balance very fast. You don't cry over a small worldly detail for hours together. No matter what happens, I cannot hold on a pattern of sorrowful thinking for more than a few minutes maximum. No matter what happens. Okay? Everything is there, everything is done, and everything collapses. Oh, what happened? No. Okay, immediately. If you come back to that, without any sorrow, it's not pepping yourself up. I'm not talking about pepping yourself up. There are these people who can always pep themselves up with a lot of things. I'm not talking about it. Put some loud music and dance a little bit. I feel good now. I'm not talking about that. Organically, integrally, deep inside, there is no loss of balance. There is not too much excitement nor there is too much of depression. You cannot sustain a psychological high or a psychological low. No situation can throw you off balance. You don't get so much excited that you forget your immediate environment, nor do you lose your mind so much that you forget what you have to pay attention on, and you lose sense of normalcy, and then you are lost in your own sorrow circuit, sob story. All this will not be possible. So then the person has jitendriya. That person has mastered oneself. Okay. So for such a person, the Supreme Self or Paramatma, the true self becomes concentrated, becomes immediately available. It becomes accessible only for a person who has acquired an inner equilibrium, an inner peace that cannot be disturbed by anything. Only for that person, the true self can be accessible, can be acquired. This is the meaning. Okay? That self becomes concentrated means becomes a reality, becomes immediately accessible. That is meaning. So, the pointer is, if you want to be free, if you want to be free, if you want to be happy, your inner peace is not negotiable. No matter what is the situation, your inner peace cannot depend on situations. Your inner peace, your inner happiness, inner equilibrium cannot, must not, should not depend on situations. No matter how legitimate or illegitimate, my own mother does not love me. What an unfortunate situation. Everybody's mother loves them, my mother does not love me. I want my mother to, is it wrong to expect one's own mother to love me? Very legitimate. If you want liberation, don't expect your mother to love you. If your mother loves you, great, put it in your pocket. If your mother doesn't love you, so what? I am not looking for anybody's love. No. If I am looking for somebody's love, life has enough opportunities to make me cry. If I am looking for somebody's recognition, life has enough opportunities to make me depressed. If I am looking for some extra cash, life can always make me a pauper. Because no matter I become a billionaire, still I am looking for extra cash because I want to be the top billionaire in the world. I am the number 2 richest man. How to become number 1? I become number 1 richest man. How to sustain my position as number 1 richest man? I can lose it anytime. Oh my God, euro is tumbling down. What will happen? No. Lakshmi Mittal is on his toes. When the iron ore commodity and iron ore prices are rising, his stock market value, his asset value is going down. So he has to sustain his status. Fellow is a billionaire. He has no problem. But he cannot sleep. He can lose sleep over some stock market graph. No? So this will not work. If I depend on, that is why they say, one of the indicators of self-knowledge, okay? If you have self-knowledge, one of the indicators is Paratantra Nivritti. I am not dependent on any external factor for the sake of happiness. Things get done or things are not done, things get undone. It may affect my comfort zone for some time. It will never affect my inner equilibrium and inner comfort. This is something you cannot negotiate. It is something that you have to keep it absolutely unconditional, uncompromising. There is no compromise on this value. Only that person can get liberation. Remember this. So that is the main indicator of this sloka. Number 8. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijitendriya Yukta Ityuchyate Yogi Samaloshtashmakam Kanchana Samaloshtashma Kanchana. The one whose mind is content in the knowledge of the self, who remains unchanged, who has mastered the sense organs and the organs of action, for whom a lump of earth, a stone and gold are same. This composed person is referred to as a yogi. A lump of clay, a stone, 22 karat gold biscuit. All has the same value. That means, if I give you If I give you a gold biscuit, you can throw to hit a mango. And if I give you a lump of clay, you should keep it in the locker. Is it what it means? No. It means my sense of accomplishment does not, sense of accomplishment or my sense of contentment does not depend on the apparent value of things. That means gold is never, no, see, definitely gold is more valuable on earth. I'll come to this joke later, okay? Why I said on earth, I'll tell you. Gold is definitely more valuable than a lump of clay. An intelligent, a normal, enlightened jnani, if you give him a gold, he is very happy because he can buy some good stuff for the ashram. If you give him a lump of clay, he will not get disappointed. He will see what can be done. He will treat the lump of the clay as lump of clay. He will treat gold as gold. But it is the same for the person, means one does not depend upon objects. The nature of the objects don't decide my level of satisfaction. That is what is Paratantra Nivritti. My sense of satisfaction and contentment does not depend on what I get. What I get, what I don't get is not going to be a cause of my satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Atmanyevatmanatushtaha. I am satisfied in myself. That is why he says, the one whose mind jnana vijnana trittatma. Why jnana vijnana? We will see. Here is a small mistake that people do. Some schools, some teachers, they say, jnana means knowledge. Okay, you read the scripture, it tells you are Brahman. You understand? This is jnana. Vijnana means to really realize in one's own experience. This is one talk going on. Okay? That's not what it means here. Jnana vijnana, here what we will see. What the Bhashya says. Jnana vijnana tuttatma jnanam शास्त्रोक्त पत्रार्थानां परिज्ञानं विज्ञानं तु शास्त्रतः ज्ञातानां तथैव स्वानुभवकरणं. This is where people misunderstand. Bhashya says knowledge means, jnana means to understand clearly what the Shastra says. Vijnana means to bring it, make it the fact of one's own experience. You are a Brahman. How will you make it as a fact of your own experience? This is the problem. It has to be understood. Fact of one's own experience, wherever you come across, making the knowledge one's own firm, abiding experience means firm commitment to the knowledge in the buddhi. The buddhi does not entertain any contrary idea about the self. One. Another, the mind does not get carried away by habit patterns. Two. Another, experience here means understanding the direct meaning or the implication of the knowledge. The self is Brahman. So you don't say the self is Brahman. Like information, no? They write academic thesis. They also have jnana. They all know the individual self is the supreme self. Is the Brahman, is the supreme reality. They don't feel I am the supreme reality. I have to see, when the Shastra says Aham Brahmasmi, oh, I am Atma, Brahma, this Atma is Brahman. This Atma sitting inside the heart, which is shining like a bulb, that is Brahman. I have to now meditate, do a lot of things and do a lot of practices, and then I will go into the heart and realize that. I will realize that Atma. This is misunderstanding. Vijnana means what the Shastra says is about you. So I extract my sense of self out of all the wrong understanding that I have superimposed on myself. I am free of all the wrong conceptions about myself, and when I read that, or when the teacher tells me that you are Brahman, I understand I am Brahman. I see myself as Brahman. Okay? That's what it means, Anubhava. Anubhava means first person understanding. Understanding your own self as really as what you are, which means you are including everything in the understanding of yourself. That is what it means, Swanubhava Karanam. Swanubhava Karanam means Aparoksha Jnanam, understanding this self that I experience directly without any instrument, what I am experiencing all the time. This me, actually my true nature is Brahman. That's what it means. Okay? So it is also only Jnanam. It only means the owning up of the meaning of what is stated in the scripture. Jnanam, familiar with what is stated in the teaching. Vijnanam, owning up the meaning of the statement of the Veda as the reality of one's own self. That is Vijnana. That's what experience means. Okay? Then the next one. So, the person is content with these two, means the vision of the self means you are complete. I am completely contented simply by the virtue of this vision of myself as I am. And there is no dependency on anything else for satisfaction or happiness. For such a person, this person who is firmly established in the knowledge, a stone, a lump of mud and gold are all the same, means they all cease to disturb the value of things cannot disturb his commitment to the knowledge. They don't disturb because they don't add anything. A valuable, a biscuit of gold is not going to bring extra. Because somebody gives me 1 kilogram of gold, I don't feel richer. I may use the gold for some useful purpose, but there is no extra value that I get for myself out of it. Because I don't get gold today, I got only a lump of clay. That also does not, that does not make me feel poorer. So things don't affect my sense of self. Experiences don't affect my sense of self, which is based on the true knowledge of what I am, which I derived from the teaching. The next one. Sukhran mitrar yudasinam adyastha dveshya bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir visishyate. Shran mitrar yudasinam adyastha dveshya bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir visishyate. The one whose vision is the same with reference to a benefactor, a friend, an enemy, an acquaintance, an arbitrator, a person who evokes dislike like a very despicable person who is not very pleasant to relate with, a relative, a sannyasi, a sadhu means a very serene and a very sattvic. Sadhu means a spiritual person, a good person, a spiritual religious person. It's something like let us say a good Kalugar. No? You see a good Kalugar or a priest, you feel good. Sadhu means they are very sattvic person. So sattvic person, and even towards sinner here means a tamasic person. No matter a person is a sattvic person, rajasic person or a tamasic person. or in relation to oneself. By themselves, the person, a pleasant person, aggressive person, very unpleasant person, despicable person. Or in relation to me, the person is very beneficial for me, the person is always giving me trouble, no, the person is always giving me disturbance, or the person is a friend or a relative, my blood relative, my brother, my father, all that. So all these people are same for this person who is a established yogi. All these people are the same means what? There is no sense of obligation to a benefactor. There is no sense of, I will say, there is no sense of hatred or disgust for a person who is disturbing. This does not mean there is no appropriateness in action. Okay? We have to see who. This has to be interpreted in two ways. With this we will stop. This has to be interpreted in two ways. We have to see who is the yogi. It is purely talking about the inner equanimity with respect to the different people that come in front. All the people are the same. Okay. But we have to see for who. If I am talking about a yogi, a well-established, enlightened person who is living an active life, means internally the person is not lost in praise and friendly actions, and internally the person does not feel bad or disgust or hatred towards people who are not very useful, towards people who are not very pleasant. The person can command the required appropriate response that the Dharma demands. Okay? If you are an active person, your mind is free from likes and dislikes and hatred and preferences, so that you are available for what is appropriate response for a given person according to Dharma in that moment. Clear? If you are a formal sannyasi, if you are a person who is a renunciate, who has taken to the life of renunciation, who does not have any social commitments, there is no appropriate behavior also. You have only one appropriate behavior towards everybody. Towards everybody, you have to radiate love and care and well-wish and serenity, no matter what is the person. They say this, no? You go to some priest. Why we are all irritated with these priests who are always looking for money? Because it's a value. If you are a priest, you cannot say, it's my profession. I am a professional priest. No. If you are a priest, it is your calling. It's not profession. You can say, you are a king, it's not your profession. You are a diplomat, it can be your profession. If you are a king, it's not your profession. You have to serve the country. If you are a priest, it's not your profession, it's your calling. Okay? I am, in India, you have this, in the temples, okay, I will first scratch my back. In the temples, you have these priests. You know, the same in every region you have. Ganesha temple, this will and then he comes and sits there. Whoever comes, he has to give some water and some vibhuti. People put some money in the plate. 10 rupees comes. Then you go inside and bring a special package of prasadam. Extra flower from the deity's statue. And then extra, how are you? And then you give some water. Whole attitude is different. Somebody puts a 50 paise, like a chinch bomb. And I go next, fast, next person. Happens in our temples. Here also, how much donation goes to the priest, the treatments, according to that. I am a doctor. Who gives me more bakshis, I will operate with more care. If bakshis is not there, my scissor is inside the belly. Some activities cannot, this is not to be done. So if I am a monk, if I am a person fully dedicated to spiritual life, or if I am a spiritual teacher, I cannot afford to give a preferential treatment to the person who is nice to me and to push away the person who is not nice to me. Whoever gives me nice food when I go for Bhiksha, in that house I will do extra prayer. Whoever gives me bad food, in their house I will not care. If the person doesn't care, I should pray for the person more. Why the person doesn't care? Because they are so much caught up in their desires. At least this person who is very charitable and everything, he will be fine because he has a good attitude. God will take care, his own good karma will take care of him. But this poor guy, he is so screwed up in his mind that he is not able to respect even a sadhu. So I should pray for him more. That should be the thing. You know. So this is like, you know, there was a Zen master. He said, Master, what will happen to you after death? Next life, I will become a donkey. Oh. After that, I will become a dog. Oh my God. After that, I go to hell. Why, Master? Why should you go to hell? If I don't go to hell, who will come there to take care of you? The master said, because this disciple is so hard. He cannot, he has to be there for the disciple. So it is a very famous saying. If I don't go to hell, who will come to the, who will liberate you from the hell? No, this is the master, this is beautiful. So if a person is a sadhu or a brahmana, both a brahmana or a sadhu, the person cannot have even in behavior partiality. There should not be a partiality even in behavior. This is what Shastra says. But if you are a diplomat, if you have certain social roles to do, if you are in charge of an organization, then you cannot help it. You have to favor some people who donate more to the organization. That doesn't mean you have to neglect the person who is not able to donate to the organization. When it comes to priority, to allotting priority for a donor, a person who is in charge of the organization, even if the person is a monk, will obviously give more importance to the one who donates more. Because if that person is not taken care, who will take care of the organization? If the organization is not taken care, how I will take care of all those people who cannot donate? If that awareness is there, it's fine. But in the process, the person cannot be completely lost to the donors also. So the fine balance has to be maintained. How to maintain the fine balance? Only if the teacher or the monk who is in charge of the organization is free of preferences in the mind. So some cases appropriateness in response may be required, but inside there must be no speciality treatment for one and lack of speciality treatment for another person, or no care or concern for another person. The care and concern is the same for everybody. Treatment comes according to what the person requires and what the person deserves, not based on how the person is towards me. Objectively, what is appropriate for the person is to be given. That is it. Okay. So, if you are a yogi, inner equanimity of vision across all kinds of people, so that you are free to do what is right according to Dharma. If you are a sannyasi, your behavior also should be the equal for everybody. No matter who is in front of you, same love, same care, same concern, and the same prayerful attitude. And the same equanimity, seeing everybody as Brahman. That is the meaning of the verse. So these are all different symptoms of how much commitment the person has in knowledge. That is why when Sri Shankaracharya story in the movie, when he comes out of Ganga after taking bath, one chandala, one untouchable who is the one who is supposed to take care of the dead bodies, he comes with a pack of dogs in the way of Shankaracharya. He says, hey, move, give way, the Acharya is coming, give way, move away, you are impure person, move. Then he stands there, wondering, move, why are you standing here? Who should move? I cannot move because I am the all-pervading self. You want the body to move? Then your body is as impure as my body. What is the point in this body moving? Then Shankaracharya suddenly realizes, I made a mistake. I am lost in my Brahminical austerity. No? And then he understood this. So when he says, no matter who is the person, if the person understands the self is all pervading and not the body and the mind, and he is free from the clutches of the attachment of the body, that person is my master, and he falls at his feet. That he sings 5 verses in praise of the great masters who are committed to enlightenment, called Manisha Panchakam. Manisha Panchakam. You can Google it and read. So that is an example of this, what the Lord says in this sloka. Then comes the description of meditation, which we will see in the, like how to meditate, all that comes in the next. Having described the progress from karma to meditation to jnana and what it means to be committed to jnana, then now the Lord is teaching meditation, which we will see in the next class. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Mritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavadishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Nirame, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu.